Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Maria Lamardo. I'm a front-end engineer at Pendo, an instructor at Vue School, and the worldwide events manager at Vue Vixens. I am also very involved in meetup events and community organizing in my hometown, and I am also a board-certified assistant behavior analyst. So I provided behavioral therapy for people with developmental disabilities for 8 years before I moved into development. And I really understand the struggles and frustrations that a lot of users with disabilities get from trying to navigate applications that are not accessible. Hence, my passion for web accessibility. So let's get started. What is web accessibility and who should worry about it? So the web was actually designed to work for everyone, regardless of language, ability, software, hardware, or location. And when we are building accessible applications, we're actually working towards that goal. Now, there's different types of disabilities. There's motor, cognitive, auditory, and visual disabilities. And when you're creating applications, you have to take all of these into consideration. And different types of disabilities will have different user experience when navigating to your websites. So when you're thinking and trying to come up with techniques for accessibility, you don't only have to look at screen readers, but think a little bit wider than that, like people who are maybe colorblind or have motor impairments that maybe make it a little bit difficult to just use a mouse. I have this color wheel here, and I actually have this application called Color Oracle, which will allow me to simulate different types of color blindness. So I do want to show you this to show how different colors can be perceived depending on the type of color blindness you have. So I really want to point out that you shouldn't rely on color alone to give users that information. You should always have an alternative way to show information other than color. Another thing you should pay attention to is your heading structure. A lot of assistive technology is able to navigate your application by headings, so making sure that you're using heading correctly. So you can start with an H1, which is the most important, all the way down to H6. And you want to make sure that you're not skipping any headings and that you can nest them inside by ranks. So for example, say you have, after your heading, you have 2 sections in your site. Both of those sections, since they are sibling, can both start at an H2. And then you can nest headings inside of each of those. Another way users can navigate your site is by the use of landmarks. And there are a lot of HTML elements that are semantic for this, so like the header tag, nav, main, footer, or aside. Now, there's a couple of issues with single-page applications when it comes to accessibility. Because we have client-side JavaScript to handle the routing, every time you route, it doesn't automatically refresh the page, and which will automatically have had announced it to the screen reader that there was a new page route, as well as it would have handled the focus for you. But there are solutions to this. With the use of Aria LifeRegions, you can help announce to screen readers that new content has been loaded, as well as being able to handle the focus. And we've talked about the different types of disabilities, and different users have different experience with this, and there are a lot of different techniques that can help a certain group of people over others. And there was actually a really good accessibility research done by Marcy Sutton with Fable Tech Labs, and she actually released an article about this. You should totally read it, and it's called What We Learned from User Testing of Accessible Client-Side Routing Techniques with Fable Tech Labs. And they went over different types of examples and implementations on announcements and routing, like focus management as well, with different users with different types of disabilities. And their findings were very interesting. And today, I have made an application, which I will show you, and I will go over some of the techniques covered in this study. So this is a simple application. It's kind of a memory game. And you can open tiles, and you can see what's in them. And if you don't match them, they will kind of close themselves. And if you match them, which maybe I won't find a match, but yeah, so when you match them, then it will stay open and stay up on the screen. Now I'm going to turn on my screen reader to show you what this experience looks like. Oh, also, there's a route happening, so there's an instruction page that tells you the instructions of the game as well as how to generate certain scores. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my screen reader.
Voiceover on Chrome, matching game.
For those of you who have never heard a screen reader, you can always speed it up or slow it down. But this one I'm using, it's VoiceOver, and it's installed in all the Macs.
Reset button, main, visited link, instructions. Chrome has new window. Visited link.
So I actually, nothing's happening. I'm going to press the new route. So you could see that I wasn't really informed of anything. I'll try that again.
Link.
So nothing's happening.
Visited link.
Let's go back to the game, and I'm muting it from here so that I could talk over it. I'll go into the game so you guys could see what that feels like.
Visited link, reset button, main, question button, list 16 items. Question button, question button, question button.
So that means nothing to me. If I was blind and I couldn't see where my focus was on the page, I can't tell one question mark button from another, right? So we are lacking a lot of, the user experience here is not great. So let's take a look at our application and see how we can change this. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually I'm going to go in my routes and add some metadata into my routes. So I've given it a title and a description, which will be used by search engines to read the description of my content for each page. And then I'm updating the title before each route. So by doing this, and I'll kind of switch this over. By doing this, you can see that if I just inspect the head, and then I'll do a reroute, and let me just zoom this in. Okay, cool. You can see that now the page title changes as I go from one route to another. Another thing we want to do is make sure that the screen reader is also picking up on these changes. So I have in here inserted, so this is like the app.vue, which is holding on my application. And in there, I have added this. Can you guys see that fine? Let me just zoom in. I have added this element, which has a role of status. Before I explain that, let's go back to the slides for a little bit. So let's talk about Aria LifeRegions. Aria LifeRegions are used to announce non-interactive content changes. And there's 3 different types. Aria Live Assertive, which will interrupt the user flow, meaning that if you're using a screen reader and your screen reader is currently reading some sort of content, and a new element comes in with an Aria Assertive, it's going to interrupt that user flow, so it's not going to finish reading whatever it was currently on, and it's going to announce this new message. Whereas Aria Live Polite will wait for you to finish that message and then tell you the message after that is done. And of course, the default, which is Aria Live Off. But when you're using RoleStatus, it actually behaves the same as Aria Live Polite, which again will update announcements when the user has finished reading anything that they're currently doing. So let's go back to our application. So again, I have given this route announcements, which I am updating here. I am watching the route change, and every time the route changes, then I am doing this. And it's best practice to hide this from the user visibly, like there's no need for this, but I have made it available so you guys can see it appearing right there. So let's zoom in so you guys can see what the screen reader would read. So I'm actually going to turn it on.
VoiceOver on Chrome, visited, link, home, Chrome, home page loaded, visited, link, instructions, instructions page loaded.
So you can see that's already a lot better for the users.
VoiceOver off.
I'll turn off the screen reader. And another thing that I want to change is making sure that the user is aware which of the links, if we have a lot of links, which of them is currently active. And we can do this by giving an attribute of Aria current, with the value of page. And I'll go back to my slides and talk about this a little bit. Aria current is used to indicate a current item on a set. And there's different types. There's page, step, location, date, and time. Right now we're looking at page, which is a current link. So let's go back to our application. So you can see that I've already given it an attribute. And if I look at my tools here, yeah, so I'm inspecting, and you could see that this one currently has Aria current. And then after you update the route, you could see that it changes to the current route. So I will go ahead and turn on my screen reader.
VoiceOver on Chrome, reset button, page changed, slide 13. Visited, link, instructions, visited, link, home.
So that's weird, right? I gave it current, but it reads the same.
Visited, link.
I actually have no idea which one is activated right now. So I am using Chrome, and I am using VoiceOver. So
Safari,
if I go to
memory
Safari,
game, home space with Safari contain. Current page, visited, link, current page, visited, link, home, visited, link, instructions. Current page, visited, link.
So you guys see that Safari was able to pick it up, and it told me that
Voiceover
the
off.
current link was the home link. And that's a really cool point, right? Like, I thought if it works on one browser, why wouldn't it work on another? Well, actually, different screen readers have different compatibilities with certain browsers. So depending on what your screen reader you're using, you might not see certain functionalities depending on the browser that you're using. And these are the different types of screen readers, the most popular ones. And NVDA, which is a free one, if you're a Windows user, this is a great choice. Works best with Firefox. JAWS, which is a paid one, it works best with Internet Explorer, and VoiceOver, which is installed in every Mac, which is what I'm using today. It works best with Safari. So that's why you might not see all of the functionalities that are currently in place in other browsers. Okay. Now, let's move on to the next step. Ooh. Okay. Okay, so in this one, I want to focus on focus management and what happens to that focus when we change our routes. So I'll actually open up our app. Okay, so again, in my app.vue, I have added this, which is a skip link to main content. So whenever I am here, I am able to skip to the main content, and I am actually, on route change, I will be focusing, bringing focus back to this. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, sorry, opened up a new window, okay. So you could see that the focus went immediately over there, and if I press enter, it's gonna go back to the main. So I have two main right now. I have one in the instructions page right here, main ID, and then I have one in the home page for the game. Now, let's talk a little bit about tab indexing so that you guys can see why certain things are happening. So tab indexing. Okay, so tab index will indicate that an element, whether an element can be focused, and its sequential order. So there is tab index of 0, which makes the element focusable by a keyboard in the DOM order. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to create a paragraph that is just like normal, yeah? And then I'm going to create another paragraph that say that I'm going to call it like tab index of 0, and I'm going to give it a tab index of 0 as well. So I'm going to save that, go back to our application in the home page. So you guys can see that I have a normal paragraph and then a tab index of 0. So I'm going to just tab through. And you guys see that I was able to get to that second paragraph that has a tab index of 0, but not the normal paragraph. So you can see that that gets added just in the normal DOM order. Now, there's also a tab index of positive numbers, so anything greater than 0, from 1 to infinity. And then this will allow these elements to be focusable, but it's going to jump the order in front of the DOM. So let's take a look at that. So I'll actually do like 1 and 2. And I'll save that. And I'll refresh so the focus is out in the body. And I'm going to tab the first time. And then you can see that it went to the element that had tab index of 1. If I tab again, it's going to go to tab index of 2. And then after you are done with all of your positive numbers, then it's going to go back to the regular DOM order. Now, I will say that this is something that you absolutely want to avoid, as people who are using assistive technology are going to have a hard time navigating like this. I'm just showing you, but really never use tab index of any positive numbers. And if you run an audit on the Lighthouse tool, it will pick it up if you have anything greater than 0. There is also tab index of -1, which allows the element to be focused programmatically. And let me show you what that means. So again, I will have the same thing, but instead of, I will have a -1. So I'm going to go through the same flow, tab, going back to the DOM order, and then I am never really accessing that tab index of -1. But let's say if I give this a reb of like tab here, then in my new game, yep, here, I am just going to focus on this element. Oh, thanks. Okay, so when I hit the reset, it will automatically lead me back to -1. And you see that that has like like the ring, focus ring. And if I delete that -1, even though I have the ref, everything is set up, it will not focus. And my focus is remaining on the button because I have not added it to the sequence. So that's why when we're navigating to main, and if I delete this, and this is in the home, right? So when I go to instructions, it's still gonna, well, let's see, yeah. So when you see that I took away the main, it's not even focusing in there. And I'm gonna open up this tool that allows me to keep track of everything that I'm focusing on in the page. So again, if I go, this should really go to main. It's really, the focus is just in the body. It's really nowhere. So that's why that's like different use cases for using -1, tab index of -1. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. Okay, so one thing that we haven't handled yet is how the user experience looks like for actually playing the game. So let's go to our home. Yep. So I started by making sure that everything has an accessible name. And I did this by using things like Aria label. I used an Aria described by somewhere, and then an Aria labeled by. And let's talk about that. So accessible names, and actually, yeah, I'll show you the browser tools in a little bit, but then there's different types, and there's many more. But let's talk about Aria label. When you give something an Aria label, it will provide like the information about that element, and you usually want to use Aria label when that content doesn't appear on the page. So for example, if you have like, the X button that is just kind of like a cross that you can close something, if your page doesn't contain somewhere that actually has written out close, you usually want to give that little icon an Aria label of close. Whereas Aria labeled by, which works very similarly, actually kind of establishes a relationship between objects, and you compare them by ID. So if you had a close button, and for some reason you had a paragraph somewhere that said close, or if it was a label somewhere, you could say Aria labeled by and match it with that ID, and it will grab that name as the accessible name. And Aria described by is also paired by an ID, and it can provide additional information to a specific element. So I have added the Aria label for the button. So these are kind of the cards. So if the card is flipped, I'm going to say the card name and that it is flipped. And if it's not flipped, then I'm just going to say card and the number of the card. So we'll go back to the application and turn on my screen reader.
Memory, yet you are online. Page changed. Slides. Card 1 button lists 16 items. Card 2 button. Card 3 button. Card 4 button.
So already, at least I'm able to keep track of where everything is on the page.
Voiceover off.
Now, when it comes to actually playing the game, let's go to well, I have actually added another announcement, and this one is for the game, but it works the same way as the route change announcement. And if you look here, I've actually started changing them inside of this function. So I'll do this so it's easy to see. But you can see that at first I just kind of reset it, then say if the card's already flipped, say that it's already been flipped. If you flip it, then say the card name and flipped. If you match it, say specific card name matched or flipped, match found, and then the number of matches that are remaining. And if you win, then update it to the winning message. And if there's no match, update it to the card name, flipped, no match. So let's take a look at how that functions.
Voiceover on Chrome, memory game, home page.
I've added a little cheat sheet with the answers on top. Yeah.
Page changed. Slide 16. Reset button. Card 1 button lists 16 items. Card 2 button. Heart flipped. Card 3 button. Gamepad flipped. No match.
And I just silenced it, but I will move on to the next and wait for a second. So you guys can see that if I wait for a second, you're going to see the area described by message.
Card 4 button. You have 2 total moves with 3 stars left.
So it told me you have 2 total moves with 3 stars left. For a visual user, I could just see right
selected.
here.
Moves 2 unselected.
And then if I find a match, and I'll just do this with my keyboard. Let's see.
Reset but card 2 button. You have card 4, card 5 button. Bell flipped. Card 8 button. Bell flipped. Match found. 7 matches left.
So
Card 7 button.
that's a lot better experience for the user than what we started with, where you couldn't even know where you were and what happened when you flipped a card, what card you flipped, what the icon even was.
Card 4 button.
I have also disabled, whenever there is a match, I've disabled the button so you don't have to tap through the buttons that are already matched. It's really not useful for users, so I'll show you.
Card 6, card 7 button, card 9 button, card 7 button.
There you go. Okay, so...
Space with code containing window home.vue, voiceover off.
Reading code with screen readers is a whole nother talk. Okay, so the last thing I did was also how to handle you winning. So and this is a component that is inside so it's not a route change, but it is a component that I have here. So this is going to show if you complete the game, else you're going to show the game itself. And I'm actually going to go into my store and cheat a little bit. I'm going to just disable all the cards, just leave one, very easy game. I just want to show you guys how I can win. But inside my component, I have added an Aria described by, so whenever this will come in, again, I am focusing it, and I'm actually focusing this one with a directive. So let me show you guys. The directive looks like this, and so every time with this directive, anytime that this element is inserted, we're going to automatically call focus in it, and it's focusable because I've added the tab index of -1, and we've given it an awesome Aria label by, which is going to say congratulations, and my winning message, which is right here. So again, I am pairing that ID to that. Oh, let's do this. Yeah. So I am pairing that ID in that Aria described by, this labeled by. Sorry. So let's take a look at what that looks like, since this is going to be a very awesome game.
Voiceover, reset button, memory game, page changed, slide 6. Card 2, card 1 button, bell flipped. Card 2 button, heading level 2, congratulations.
Woo!
Memory game board group, you won the game with 3 stars left. You are currently on a heading level 2. Voiceover off.
So thanks. So yeah, I hope that this was able to show not only the screen reader functionality and focus and all of that, but I really want you guys to take away that there is a user behind this, and there's a whole user experience of how they play and how they interact with the game. And that's something that I want you guys to think about. It's not just Aria labels here and there. Make sure that you're testing this. Like, how does that user flow look like? So I put the GitHub link for this game, and I actually wrote a Vue Vixens workshop to build out this application and with accessibility. And if you guys want to learn more about accessibility, I have an web accessibility fundamental course in Vue School. So please check them out. They are giving free passes, so grab one. Thank you, guys.